Well, good morning. That was a little bit energetic for me this morning.
Morning, everybody.
Hey, how's
That's a
everybody? Well,
Yay!
I don't often drink coffee, but when I do, I use Manitoba's most delicious creamed honey to
Oh,
sweeten
thanks, buddy.
So, I'll tell you what, I had to make
That
coffee. I had to make coffee this morning. My wife has demolished Manitoba's most delicious creamed honey since I've gotten home. I mean, we tested it, tasted it, so it was like a spoon, right, in Canada. However, it's literally less than half a jar. When I got my spoonful, it was like hitting the bottom of the glass. That was crazy. So, you brought up a great point to me about the swarm rustler competition, right? The swarm catch competition. So, a couple clarification issues this morning. That first of all, you're submitting photos and videos with the bottle of swarm lure with your swarm catch, right? First thing. So just know those are going to be used in social media and on YouTube as far as promotion. Secondly, somebody brought up a comment that, well, Mr. Ed and Dirt Rooster already have a competition going, and Mr. Ed's already caught like 12, but he hasn't submitted any in. So it starts with that, right? Submitting in. That's the whole qualification. You have to submit a photo with your swarm catch or a video clip, preferably video clip. I can share that up to YouTube and whatever, and I'll give you props, tag your channel and all that in it, and that way we have video evidence and photo evidence that you're being successful with the lure, and that's the goal. So if you haven't seen that, I guess I will take this advertising moment that I have purchased already this beautiful decorative championship ring for the person that has the most swarm catches using my lure. To either of them have swarm lure? Yeah, so actually both of them have used it. Mr. Ed has used it in his, and Randy actually has some that he was going to list on his website. I don't know if he ever did. He did buy some, but you have the opportunity to win this beautiful Swarm Rustler Champion of 2024 ring. And once the winner has been announced, which it will be later in the year, guys, because as we know, swarm season changes based on where your geographical location is. So it will be probably after most people's honey flows. I think if I would be safe to say when Brad tells me the honey flows over in Canada, that it would be a good time to calculate, right? But I'll keep a running total on a spreadsheet of people that submit and how many they've submitted. And, we'll do it like that. But once the winner has been announced, it'll get a nice decorative case with their name on it, and something like Champion 2024, and it's just a display case that the ring sits on your desk, turns all lovely and everything, and just a nice little thing. So I just wanted to get that little housekeeping out of the way this morning because didn't want any misconceptions on that. But
I think that's a great idea, that contest. That's that just a little bit of fun, which is awesome.
Yeah, David, most of Randy's are cutouts. Most of Mr. Ed's, I think, are actually swarm captures and traps. He does a lot of baiting and trapping where Randy does mostly removals. So here's the thing. They're busy guys. I don't know that they would actively participate. If you had someone like Rodney Middleton, who, as far as I know, has never purchased a bottle or used it, he catches a lot of swarms, right? that would be somebody that would probably be up there. But that's kind of the beauty, that you can, we'll be tracking it, and it'll be in the No Life Beekeeping Facebook group. I'll put it on there. I'll put it up in the community chat, stuff like that. So plenty of time, guys. It's just getting started. I literally announced it yesterday, so everybody's on an equal footing at this point. So get the rustling, and we'll see what happens, because a lot of you already have the lure. Some people haven't even ordered the lure yet to even participate. So be interesting.
And I think it's fair. You know, some people have said, "Oh, I've caught, you know, whatever, how many swarms already." Well, keep doing that. You know, just keep doing that and take the pictures with the swarm lure and send them in. So you've got a really good chance. But regardless, you know, it's a great prize. But it's the fun is in the actual doing of the contest and being involved in it, right? Because you know what, Bob, I can use some fun in my beekeeping, because my beekeeping is largely just this, right? Just this. It's just work. And I need some things to put a little bit of fun in that. So that's a nice little contest to have some fun with.
Philip says, and some people are waiting. Well, I mean, like last year, Phil, how many swarms did you catch? So, I mean, it's just, guys, that's why we've got to take it in perspective. Obviously, if you're in Florida, you've had more time than someone here, even, or in Michigan, right? So it'll be interesting. Yeah, a new foot of snow. Well, hey, that's why it's going to last for several months, guys. And I don't typically get spring swarms because I manage my apiary in a fashion where I don't get early swarms. It's always after they've built up, after the honey flow, and then decide they want to hit the trees. There you go, man. We just need photos and video evidence. Whoop, if I don't knock this off there. So it's just something fun, right? I mean, it's and you might get some notoriety from...
You might get some notoriety.
Just think, who knows? Who knows how this may morph? I mean, there may be other things. There might be like runners-up stuff. I'm just trying to... if I do something, I want to do it nice, right? I don't want anybody to feel let down. But there could be alternate gifts that come in for like other places. We'll just say that, right? Just depends on the participation of everybody and how it goes. Obviously, I mean, I was talking with you guys earlier about like the Amazon sales, right? My lure sells nothing in comparison to the other lures online, right? Mine says the overall pick on Amazon, but I have not spent a single dollar in actual advertising. So all of that has been generated from social media and word of mouth, and maybe just a random person trying it, right? So it's so this morning I did put a few dollars. I mean, very low budget advertising. I'm not selling 20,000 a month or something like that, right? I think I sold 50 bottles in the last month on Amazon. So hey, it doesn't matter to me, Sharon. If you catch a swarm and it's got a picture with you know, there is a little bit of trust there, right? That you're using the product and you've got it in the photo, and you know, I can't control those things, but if you have a photo,
and if you're driving, if you're causing your own colonies to swarm so that you can catch them, so that you can take a picture, so you can enter the contest, props to you. And it's got to be legit, because I don't know anybody that actually caused their colonies to swarm. Just enter contest,
right? But you know, what's the best way to catch a swarm? Start with my swarm lure. No, you know, and I try to be totally honest about lures in general, not just mine, but any lure, guys. When you bait a swarm box up, all this stuff is designed to do is get them to find the box. Everything else about that box is totally about size, right? If you've got a single 5-frame nuke as a box and you've got a 10-pound swarm, they're not going to choose your box because they won't fit. It's just that way, you know. So it all it does is get them to identify there's a box there and get them to check it out. Whether or not they move into it, that's totally up to what you guys got going on. Old comb, space in the box, lots of things. So sorry, my wife just sneezed in there.
Comment, Hive Bee, the Beehive Homestead. I just grafted my first round of queens. So I've got a question. Your first round of queens ever, or for the season? Which both are exciting, but if it's your first ones ever, that's really exciting. So I'd love to see that. I'd love to see people taking that on. That's that is absolutely transformative when you're beekeeping. I remember when I started doing that, it completely changed my life to have extra queens sitting on the sidelines.
You see that? Shaking frames of bees to take a picture. I'll try that in my free time.
Yeah.
Hey, just take a little video of them marching in the front door past the bottle of swarm lure. If they're actually,
mine is the best time to set up swarm traps. Yesterday.
Yeah, it depends where you're at.
The next best time is today.
Yeah, so it depends where you're at, right? So I've got some in my yard, guys. I'll be the first one to tell you I don't go out in the woods and hang traps, right? I just put some traps around my bee yard as insurance colonies to hopefully catch something if it swarms in my apiary. Because I work a day job, I don't have necessarily time to go out in the woods and track them down and find all that, right? Heck, probably most of the bees over here are swarms that I've lost in the past anyway. So maybe I could capture some of my swarms for 2021 and 2020 and 2019.
Oh, I thought I'd put up a little more recent picture. I took this picture yesterday. So the apiary is, we didn't get much snow this year, so the apiary is clearing off. But boy, that's ice. It's not just a little skiff of snow. That is ice. And it's going to take a little while to melt.
Is the ground pretty solid or is it soggy, like mushy?
Well, it's frozen. It was minus 22 last night. So it's frozen. It's definitely frozen. It will be soggy though, because it's always a bit of a we're size 14. It's always a bit of a conflict because I would love to bring my bees out now while everything's frozen, so I don't make a mess and I don't get into the mud. But it's too cold, so I have to wait until it warms up, and then it gets messy, it gets muddy, it gets soft. I start to make tracks everywhere, and the tractor makes a big mess. So, it's just what I have to put up with because I can't bring the bees out when it's so cold. So last year worked really nice because I had a good snowpack in here. I had about a foot of snow in my apiary. And what I did, because of my little tractor, is, I have my snowblower on it, and I would bring out a load of bees on the tractor, and I turn around and go and make a line in the snow, clear the snow right off of the ground right then and there, and start setting bees down, so the ground didn't get a chance to thaw out while I was driving on it. So it worked out really nicely last year. But out of 9 years I've done this, that was the only year it's happened like that.
Brad, yesterday you made mention of a folklore lure. Any chance you can elaborate on that story?
Folklore lure? Well, all I'm referring to is something that is used because people say it works, right? Not, and it may very well work, as opposed to something that has had chemical analysis and scientific study done on what attracts bees, like nasanub pheromone and stuff like that. So that's all I was saying. The differential wasn't meant to be disparaging about anything, but there's a differential there between what we've always used, kind of thing. You hear people talk about what people use all the time, and those things may very well work. But I was making a differential that there's some things that are derived from scientific chemical analysis and whatnot. So
speaking of that,
that's the difference.
I know a lot of people were talking about, in particular, we were talking about the Appy tablet, and people were wondering about studies with as far as mite effectiveness and we should say essential oils, right? So this was sent to me, and it is a scientific study based on essential oils and their effectiveness on varroa control. So for you guys that are interested in scientific studies and like to read long documents based on scientific names and data, here's something for you guys. So this is not specifically Appy tablet related, but it does give you some guidelines on what's effective and what's not effective. And, so this should kind of, in my mind, it kind of validates Appy tablet because it does have a blend of essential oils in it, 17 essential oils and thymol, and not sure exactly the mixture or composition, but give you some data there to take a look at if you choose to. And it's got them all marked.
A little note of housekeeping, Bob. That link, you could clean that up a little, because you see in the middle there it says $FBCLID. That's a tag. You don't need that part. What that is, it's identifier. Every time you click that, Facebook counts that as a click.
So
really the right at the end of the 799 is really all you need.
Okay, let me see if I can
for that link, and then you don't give Facebook unearned credit for that.
Okay, so use this link then. That should do it. Apologize, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, no apology necessary. And that, for everybody listening too, when you share those links, all of that, if there's a question mark and then Google does it too, GCLID, that's Google click link ID. You don't need that part. Just copy what's before that.
So in my mind, when I started reading that, it really gave me some validity on, for me, the Appy tablet, because that's been the biggest point of contention with a lot of people. Is there any data? Yeah, there's data all over the place. You just got to find it, right? And if you scroll to the bottom, if you're really, really just that guy, Tom, since you said the engineer in you, if you go to the bottom, there is a whole list of cross references from different publications about varroa mite and amitraz resistance, reduction in efficacy, all kinds of stuff. Keith Delaplane has an article that's cited. We looked in, who else? Bon Christiani and our friend there. Oh gosh, now she's our friend, but I can't remember her name. What was her name? She was at the show.
Underwood.
Dr. Robin Underwood. There you go. She was cited in there. But there's about, let me scroll down. 90 references, cross references that you can look at. So if there's any question, refer back there. Yeah, DC, you're right. People have been using essential oils for decades, but for some reason, this new generation of beekeeper has to have everything has to be documented and spelled out for them. And I think most people, if I were a betting man, most men won't read directions on a remote control,
let alone a scientifically published paper.
A scientific study.
You can't get them to read the label, but you got to have the study in front of them. And honestly, it's again, I want to be disparaging, but it's simple fact that it seems to be very strange that there are a lot of products out there that are very, very popular, and there's almost nothing in the literature about them, but wow, my bees look good, So
Right.
it's okay to do both, right? It's okay to say, I use this product because I feel that it works good, but you got to make sure you understand that that's why you're using it. Um, if you're using a product that has that has clinical testing and papers and published work on it that you can read. That's a different reason to use a product. So there's both, but I think it's important to keep the two separate and keep the two distinct. That I use essential oil products in my syrup because I feel that it does makes the bees do this or that or
Mhm.
helps me in some way. Uh, that's fine. However, you know, go against published literature, that's a different thing. And honestly, sometimes the published literature, you can read something in there and you try it out and it really doesn't work very well for you,
Right.
but still it's there. So there's two different things. There's bee lore and there's published literature.
Well,
So
nobody
I was just
is disputing this, Tim. Propolis is something that that old box smell is usually in there, and lemon people have been using lemongrass. Nobody's ever said it doesn't
sure.
work. Yeah, nobody's ever
Yeah.
said it doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Oh,
So if that's I know you got a video out on that, and that's great. If people want to do that, go check it out. That's that's up to what everybody wants to use.
so Mark's been asking some questions about how to start. Uh, and there's a lot of background needed to be helpful in that. How to expand and have more hives. Well, there's a lot to that. Where are you located? Are you in an area that you can catch swarms? There's a good way. I'm not, so that's not a good way for me. Um, how many do you have and how many do you want? How much space do you have? How many hours a day and days of the week do you have to spare? Um, do you have any nest egg funding that you want to put toward this? What do you have already? Are you set up for basic beekeeping, smoker, hive tool, bee jacket, yada, yada, yada? Do you have an extractor? Do you have all of the basic tools? So there's all that. How many more hives? Well, more than 100 or more than 1,000 or more than two? Because the answers are different. Uh,
right.
I the one piece of advice I will give in every situation is a piece of advice I was given by my mentor when I started, and he said, buy equipment, and in my case, buy material to build equipment sometimes, but he said buy equipment and build bees. And the point is there bees die, right? Your asset is in the equipment, not the bees. Yes, the bees can be an asset if they're alive, but guess what? They die. So don't bank on the asset. You go and spend a bunch of money and heaven forbid borrow a bunch of money to buy a bunch of bees. Those bees are going to die. You borrow money to buy a bunch of equipment. That equipment's going to last you. And it's going to last you a long, long time, and it has residual value. So that's really the only advice I can give you. Uh, this is my second year, Mark says. Okay, well, good. So, and again, I don't know how many you have now, but you and the rest of us have a lot to learn. So this is your second year. You have not
Done everything
gone
exactly
through an
once so far.
entire. No, not even, because guess what? You have not come through with overwintered colonies, and those are very different animals than a nuke that you buy in the spring. And again, I don't know where you are, so that's still an unknown uh, part to this moving puzzle. Um, I got my butt kicked my first. Actually, it was my second spring, but that was a very different experience to come through winter and into spring with overwintered colonies, because those want to swarm a whole lot more than than a new colony. You get a nuke, you don't have to worry about swarming if you get a nuke. It's just going to go through summer. You come through winter, Erie, Pennsylvania, so you're in a little bit cooler climate, not as cold as I am, but not as warm as Bob. So I would suggest, if you have a couple colonies now, avoid too much growth yet. Schedule your growth for 2025 because you still have a lot of bee management handling to get accustomed to, and watch those bees and watch what they do and how they grow and how you're going to react to that. The one thing I will tell you that at this point in your beekeeping career, you don't have enough drawn comb. I'll guarantee you don't. And if you can buy some, that would be a really good move. Because the one thing you're going to have to do to keep your bees in the box is give them more space when they start to grow. And foundation is not space. I don't care what you say. Drawn comb is space. It's not just physical square inches. It's comb space. So you need to have that. If you don't have it, I would suggest, like, I don't know what you have. Do you have singles? Do you have doubles or double deeps? Like, I'm imagining what you have. So if you have a single or a double, I would say you should have another deep of drawn comb on hand. So if you don't have that from your honey flow last year, then you need to go and buy some from somebody. Just a box, one box per colony will do.
Well,
I run all deeps
if
for
he's had
different
a
reasons,
couple
and
dead
one of them
outs,
take advantages.
if he's had a couple dead outs, so he might have a couple extra frames there to work with.
Yeah, you might. So I run all deeps, and one of the big advantages is any of my honey boxes, I can use those comb frames, drawn comb frames for brood chambers. I know a lot of people don't like deeps and can't use deeps in some situations for honey boxes. So yeah, that's can't really give you too much more advice because I don't have a good picture of what you're up against.
So yeah, I mean, just this time of year is so different for everyone, right? If you're in Florida, you've already been doing things, quite differently than even I'm doing it here. Supposedly it's spring, but last night it got in the 30s, right? And where you're at, it's just frozen. So it's like
the whole world is frozen here, man. Like I said, minus 22 last night. Oh man, and it's been like that every night for a while. It's been really cold. It's probably been colder. March has been the coldest month this winter. It's been a very warm winter, and March just will not give it up. It's just said, okay, you think you're just going to slide into spring? We're going to give you something to remember.
Right. Well,
like when you were here, Bob, it was way warmer here in February when Bob was visiting than it is now.
Until right when I was leaving. Then it started getting cold.
And then even way colder than that now.
Tom says his cool sunny day is 39 right now. And today it's 65 and cloudy right here, so it's still not prime beekeeping weather, right? So it's just one of those things there. Let me see, bees comb pretty good after the honey supers come off. I think what that is, David, and I could be totally full of crap on this, but my thought is that maybe if they're still drawing comb after you pull the super off, there might be a little residual flow still going, and they need somewhere to put it, so they start drawing comb.
I like to run a frame or two of foundation in a honey box, regardless. If I've got all drawn comb for honey box, stick a frame or two of foundation in that. I'm gonna draw that out really nice, and it doesn't hurt your honey flow. So it's just a really good way to have a continuous supply of drawn comb. I draw a lot of foundation anyway, so I actually don't do it that way as a rule. But if I do have boxes of drawn comb to put on a honey flow, I'll just stick a frame or two of foundation right in it.
The
just to keep that fresh comb. Fresh comb there's nothing like fresh comb. Stick that in a brood chamber the next year. You've got a nice fresh brood chamber, and you can pull those old ones out, start rendering them off, freshening things up.
let's see.
I do like to put a lot of people run nine frames in a 10 frame box and a honey box here. My rule is that if they're drawn, I'll do that. That's a really good approach. If there's one frame of foundation in that box, then I'll run 10 frames, just so that foundation frame is pinched down a little tighter, and they're a little more reliable to draw that. And if I can at all help it, I will pre-wax that frame, even though it's a wax frame out of the box, which they draw well. I will pre-wax that myself, and they'll draw that to the extent that they are able in about a day. It's just amazing to watch how fast they'll draw that foundation if you pre-wax it.
Let's see. Yep, extra waxing. I just, even when I extra wax those green frames, I can't get them to draw them out. I don't know. Maybe it's just not having the population in the box primarily, from over splitting. I really think that has been
don't build drones, so
I think that's been a limiting factor for me since I've been beekeeping, over splitting, right? So just keeping them 2 week. So we're trying to manage.
I've had really good success with those. I used those my first about 2 to 3 years, and I had excellent success with those green deep Pureco drone frames. So they can work. They definitely can work.
Last night on Charlie's stream, people were asking about your story frame, and I know it comes up every year, but
yeah,
will you talk about that a little bit this morning?
Yeah, sure. And so I'll talk about the progression of why I started using that. So when I started beekeeping in 2015, I think it's common among new beekeepers. You don't want to start throwing a bunch of synthetic chemicals and pesticides in your nice new clean box of bees right away. So I was no different than that. I wasn't just dead set against it, but I just wanted to not if I didn't have to. So one of the strategies I took up, part of my IPM, integrated pest management, to protect my bees from mites, was drone trapping, mite trapping, drone culling, whatever you might want to call that. So that's where you put in a frame that is a drone size cell. They draw that out, lay it with drones. Then you pull that frame out, you put it in the freezer, or you can scrape it off. But I just put it in the freezer, freeze it a couple days, and then next round go and put that back in. That's a lot of work because you need to do it every 21 days on a schedule. If you don't, then you have a mite factory is what you have. So I was doing that, and I did that about 3 years. And as I grew to about 120 colonies, I realized that this was more work than I could do in a day. So I needed a different solution. So I read a Randy Oliver article on that method, and he did conclude that it was a method that can actually have a positive effect on a desirable effect on the mite population. So that was nice to hear. And he suggested some variations on how to do the drone frame. And I want to make a distinction here. I may say drawn frame or drone frame, and I hope you know the difference when I say those. So a drone frame can be a drawn frame, but a drawn frame isn't always a drone frame. But I did see another beekeeper, Lori Miller, on Facebook, and she had this frame, and she showed this picture of this frame that she was using, and she said how much she loved it. And what she did was, I wish I had one here to show you, but it's very simple. It's just a standard deep frame that I would use in my brood chamber. But she took her plastic foundation, and I use nothing but plastic foundation, and you may use something else, and that's fine. but I took my plastic foundation and I cut it exactly in half. And I took that half a sheet of foundation and I put that in the center of the deep frame, left the outside, and of course now it's quarters on the outside, blank. So there's nothing there at all. I put that in the hive, and the bees will draw that plastic foundation out, and it's worker size cells. But then they get to draw whatever they want on the sides because it's foundationless. And more often than not, especially if it's a full size colony and it's fairly, it's doing well, they will draw drone sized comb in the outsides of that. So that's where the drone cells ended up being. A side benefit of these drone comb frames is that it keeps your hive clean of drones everywhere. Like, when in your hive, you open it up, especially if you have a double, you'll open it up and there's drone brood between the frames on the top bars. You don't get any of that if you use a dedicated frame that has drone space. So the reason I started using that is to make my job a little easier for my drone trapping. So what I would do is I would go to the colony, pull my what I now call story frame, but that's yet to come. I would pull that and I'd just take my hive tool and I'd cut that comb out, pop it out, cut the comb out of the other side, pop it out, put it back in the hive, and then they would redraw that and lay drones again. Now, it was very messy. I had all this drone comb, drone larva, pupa now to deal with and all that, and it was really messy. I didn't do that very long. However, I noticed something. When I would manage my colonies, I could go into that colony and I could pull that drone frame. I could look at that and that would tell me a story. And that's why I started calling that a story frame. It would tell me a story about that colony because weak colonies don't lay drones. Okay, so, or strong colonies out of season don't lay drones. So that frame would tell me how that colony is doing. If I pull that frame and it's absolute slam full of drone brood on both sides, then that's a thumbs up. That colony is feeling good. They've got excess. They've got a lot of power. They're healthy. If that's not the case, then there's something else going on. Maybe it's late in the season. But if it's not late in the season, the colonies maybe not feeling vigorous and that they got a lot of extra power and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I started calling that story frame. I run that in position 3 in my hives. You could put it in a different position. You could put it in 4. I probably wouldn't put it too far out because the story gets a little weaker as you move that away from the center. And the fact that I've got that frame in position 3 in every colony, I get the same perspective from that frame in every colony. So it's telling me a story, but it's telling me a story from exactly the same perspective in each box. So
if
that's
you've got
just
it
why I
in,
call that.
if you've got it in the third spot in every single box, you can check that, and that'll tell you basically an overall view of, hey, is this colony strong enough to start drawing drones? And you can compare that to all of your other thirds to see how they're doing.
Right. Yeah, again, those frames, because they're all in position 3, give me their perspective from exactly the same position. I wouldn't manage a colony only by what a story frame tells me. Story frame just tells me a little more information than not having one, and it keeps my drones on that one frame. One thing I don't like is having drone cells scattered throughout the different frames in my hive because I'm still a fairly new beekeeper. And if I see drone cells here and there, there's a little red flag that goes up and I start to question my queen. Is my queen a drone layer? Is my queen running out of ammunition? Is she starting to, lay a drone from time to time? I don't know. So I'd rather have my drones on that frame so that they're contained there and I know they're supposed to be there, so I don't question their presence, and actually their presence then can tell me some interesting and useful information. So that's how
And
the
you
story
run one
frame.
in every colony.
As a rule, I mean, there's variations, but yeah, as a rule, and I'm getting more and more experience, so I rely a little less on that information, but it's still interesting information. But I run them anyway because I want to give that colony somewhere to make drones. If you don't give
Right.
them somewhere to make drones, they're going to make drones anyway, right? But then they start making a mess of the hive. I don't have to continuously clean off drone brood and clean up the hive when I want to manage it. The story frame does that for me. So I'd run them regardless if you're using it for that or not.
Let me see. I'm just DC said, plus if you want to cut out drone comb as a tool, they make it easy. Yep. Also,
Yeah, and that's like I say, that's how I started using them, and that's why I started using them. But then I
and,
realized
and
that,
if there's no drones in it, then it makes good for cut comb.
well, I actually run them sometimes in a honey super, and then I just cut the sides out for comb honey. I put that in a tray and sell it. So that's another. And you know what? I would encourage you even, and don't forget, I run all deep boxes. I have some mediums, but I typically run all deeps. So, but you can do this with mediums too. If you're buying plastic foundation, boy, this stuff is going up in price all the time. You can cut your foundation cost in half by just cutting those things into, putting that sheet in the center, and then they can draw the rest
However they
free
want.
form, I call it, foundationless, and uh, and it's stable. Like for example, I tried when I was a new beekeeper, I tried all foundationless frames. They worked fine. However, a deep foundationless frame, if you don't have good support in that frame, it'll collapse.
And if you
I
turn it to
still
look
do
at it,
run some. Yeah, yeah. Be
swing
really
out.
careful. And I've even had them collapse in the hive because the wax is soft and whatnot. A medium, you're okay. They run foundationless okay, I've noticed. Um, but you can run a half a sheet of deep foundation in the center in a honey box, and it gives it enough support. It doesn't collapse, in my experience. So you could cut your foundation costs in half by just cutting your foundation in half. Put a half a sheet in there.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
blessing in itself, right? Because now,
yeah,
uh, depending on how much you pay for foundation, I mean, you're spending half as much per frame, and cost savings is always something that um, that's beneficial to all of us, no matter what scale you are.
sure.
If
Yeah,
you cut
exactly.
that down.
The only downside I see, because in my operation, like I say, I run all deeps, and if I'm going to take that frame now and put that in a brood chamber, well, now it's got no foundation on the sides, and maybe I want that to be worker brood, but the colony has a different idea. I don't necessarily want that. It'll still work just fine, but I'm just saying that that's probably for me
Right.
the only real downside there. Yeah.
I need to up my story frame game. I haven't run them, and I've had an issue with the green frames, right? So maybe that's a good alternative for me to do that. Um, so I might have to start doing that. It would work even more economically with mediums. Yeah, I mean, typically the medium frames are definitely cost about the same as a deep frame. So
Too, and that's one
sometimes
reason I
more.
don't run them. Yeah, yeah, because
Sometimes
I mean, I
more.
have, you know, what do I have? 5,000 frames or more.
I think it also
So
allows the bees to be more natural as far as their festooning and stuff to build comb. At least on the sides, right? So maybe it'll stimulate them a little
yeah,
bit more to get on those frames.
yeah,
I don't know if there's any
yeah,
difference in the way they draw them out, but
yeah. DC says he's running story frame medium supers. It works just fine. Sometimes when they go on a honey super, they start to go a little bit crooked on the sides, but usually not a huge problem.
Nature Sweet Bees, I think my problem is me. I mean, to be 100% honest, right? So,
Well, own it.
hey, I'll own my mistakes if I make them, or if I feel
If
like
you
I've
don't
made.
own it, you'll never change it.
Yeah. So the biggest thing for me was, and I think I don't know if it's everywhere, but there's a lot of information out on the tube here that tell people split. You know, hey, you want to grow, just split. Barnyard bees. Oh, you just need one frame, right? So you take this one single deep and you split it down 10 times, you know, to make splits, and then your bees are weak, and they will not draw that green frame out if they're not a strong colony. They're not going to mess with it. Or if they
Okay,
don't get
here's
it
an
drawn out
example.
before you
Here's
grow
an
it.
illustration of that, Bob. Just because you said that, I want to break in here with this illustration. I talked to a guy uh, online one time. He said he runs nothing but foundationless deep frames in his brood chambers, and I said, "Wow, that's really great. You know, that's awesome." But I said, "How do you keep them from just filling those frames up with drone brood? Because that's what they'll do." And his answer was so simple. It was simple genius. He said, "Well, it's easy." He said, "I just draw all of my foundationless frames in nukes because nukes don't build drone comb. Nukes only build worker comb because they're not strong enough. They're not to that stage where they're wanting to build drones to do the reproductive cycle. They're only building workers to build up, right? And that's a stage where they won't build. And so that might be kind of what you're up against with that. You've got to have a nice, robust colony so that they're really feeling it, and they really need to start making some of the fellas to pass those genes along.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way. But you know, I'm hopefully, as I get further along my beekeeping journey, like we've talked about it this year, that heck, if you've been keeping bees 6 years, if this is your 6th year, you've only done everything 5 times, right? That's it.
Yeah.
5 times. And
So,
can you really count
I'm
the first year? Because really, the first year, did you really do anything? You put them in the box, right?
this many for me.
So, so,
That's the only 8 times I've done things. So
it's not. So every year, you know, you think you're learning a little bit more, and sometimes, you know, like you don't pick things up till year 5, 6, 10, when you know, whenever it happens to hit you, and
and that, Bob, is the magic of having this community we have off to the side here. You know, everybody in the chat here adding their experiences and even asking questions, because there is no way to understand a subject better than having to explain it. If you
right,
can't explain it, your understanding isn't complete. So having this conversation and having people, like-minded people who kind of have not all exactly the same goals, but very similar goals. You know, healthy bees. We all want healthy bees, right?
right.
So uh, that's the magic of these communities that we have here.
Well, you know, and actually, it was last spring, and I'll have to give James props for this because he was the guy that really opened my eyes to it. Right? He says, "Yeah, we're not going to do weak splits, right? We're not going to do them. We're not going to do the 1-2 frame splits. We're going to do what a nuke is, like 3 frames of brood, right? 2 frames of food. We're going to put that up in a box over a queen excluder, and we're going to let them equalize themselves, and then we're going to pull those out and make a nuke with them." And first of all, what it did is it allowed my queen, in that process that she's in the bottom box, now she's got new foundation or new drawn comb. She's already regenerating that box, right? She's already down there laying that up. Up top, the bees have already told you how many bees they need to keep that brood warm, right? So now you just take those frames off and let them split themselves, and that way, for me, it was a much simpler, easier way. Not to say there's not a million different ways to do a splits, guy, That's not the thing I'm saying here. What I'm saying is, for me, it allowed me to make the proper strength split that my bees needed to be successful in their new location. Because we all know that strong bees do better defending their own colony. For the most part, they do better at, minimizing hive beetles as much as possible, wax moths, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I went to, making stronger splits to hopefully give them the highest percent chance of survival. Did they all survive? No, they didn't, for other reasons, but or whatever reason, it doesn't even matter. Mostly, I'll say it's my error, right? Bees aren't going to treat themselves. That's for the most part. So I'm learning with you guys every day, right? Every time we do a live, I read the chat. People say I do this and I do that, and I try to absorb as much of that as I can while it's scrolling through the comments. Or I talk to Brad and Todd and James and Ian, and several people all the time about bees, right? Like daily about bees. An addict, like Jim said there. And you kind of have to be, because when you first start out, it's a big expense, and then as you start growing bigger, it gets a bigger expense, right? So it gets to that point. And I've said it to my wife and other people. It's like, I can't fail at this. I've got too much tied up in it to take an L. It's not going to happen, right? So just doing what I can to make stronger splits and trying to make those bees make it. And every year I introduce a little bit of, that's it, Dan. I'm a first-year beekeeper 10 years in a row. That's exactly right. And it's amazing.
I've been a first-year beekeeper a lot. Just look at my apiary.
But you don't think about it, right? So every year, it's a new, like, it's been 12 months since the last time you did that thing.
Yeah.
So every year you're having to refresh your memory.
I forget things, and then it's a moving target, because guess what? This weather is never the same, right? Every year you cannot, and that's what I heard from the very beginning of my beekeeping. They say you cannot keep bees by the calendar, right? You have to have cues, and I hear people talk a lot about this tree is budding, or this tree is blooming, or this flower is out. Those are your cues about the season, but not the calendar dates. We talk about calendar dates a lot. Well, that's people made that up, not the weather. The weather is far more random than that.
Oh yeah.
And I had a comment about we're talking about the community and how we share and we rely on each other for our wisdom and our knowledge and everything. And I want to encourage everybody too. I see quite a bit, two people sharing how they manage in a certain way, and sometimes there gets to be a somebody might take the stance that, well, you're doing it wrong and you have to do it my way, kind of thing. And there's so many ways to do the same thing. There's so many, and sometimes one is better than the other, but often one is better than the other because it's the way that works well for me, right? I have to do that all the time. I look at successful beekeepers and see what they're doing and see how they're achieving that. And I have to take that round peg and put it in the square hole that's in my apiary, right? I have to kind of chisel the edges off of that and say, well, how can I modify that just a little without modifying the end result? Because it's the end result I'm going for, right? I learned from people who have a whole crew of people. Well, my crew consists of me,
right?
And so that's a little different, right? And you've got 100 or 200 colonies to manage in a day. It's a little different. So I have to manage. How can I get my tractor involved? How can I get my hive lifter involved? How can I get leverage my pallets, leverage my whatever I have to do that work. Whereas a lot of other people, they just have a whole crew of people.
Well,
And I don't have that luxury.
I took a
So
little
just
bit
things
of
like that, and always realize that that person's situation is not going to be the same as yours.
right. Well, I mean, I took a little bit of ridicule right this year about and laughter. I saw it. Don't think I didn't see the LOLs and I did. I saw this. I believe it was in Manitoba, right? That I made the comment when I was in the room that I'm trying to adapt Canadian beekeeping practices to where I live in South Carolina. Well, in fact, they're not Canadian beekeeping practices. They're just beekeeping practices, right?
Beekeeping practices.
And
Yeah.
what I will say about my experiment is I had more colonies come through the winter. They look better this time of year than they typically do, right? And that's two very big strides in the right direction, right? Um, and I said that, and it really came down to a couple basic things, and James beats this like a drum too. I hear him say it more than just about anybody. It's the life cycle of the bee, right? And in working backwards from dates that in your area. If you know your honey flow starts April 1st, let's say, you need to start working backwards to where you need your bees to be at April 1st and working backwards, right? So people are laughing. Why are you feeding your bees in December? And why are you putting pollen patty on Christmas time? Well, because they need to be big enough at this time. And I can't do that if I don't do that at those times, right? So most of my losses were actually at late last season. They weren't really even into winter yet when I started losing some colonies, right? And then it gets into our pseudo winter, and I start losing some. Yeah. So David, exactly. So the location thing does change, but what doesn't change is that it takes 21 days for a bee to hatch, 23 days for a drone, and 16 days for a queen, right?
Yeah.
So that's when you have to.
And that's all matched up with the environmental cues on when they're going to want to do certain things, when they're going to want to swarm, when they're going to want to shut down brood rearing, when they're going to want to be stimulated to lay brood, drones, all of those cues. It's not just a machine that she's gonna. We always hear, well, queen lays 2,000 eggs a day. Well, that's kind of when, right?
Right.
Maybe the 1st of June, but it's not a machine that's going to lay 2,000 eggs a day every day for 365 days a year. December 21st, she's going to maybe lay 10 eggs. You don't know. So it's all those, but there's influences on when they're going to do that, and that's what we're dealing with.
So one thing I was doing is I was putting dry pollen sub in a tube. And in the past, I just put it there. I didn't really have a reasoning behind it other than, they'll take it if they need it. They won't, right? But then I started saying, well, they're taking it. Why are they taking it? Because they're trying to raise brood, right? And if they need that, then why would I just give them that? Why wouldn't I go ahead and put pollen patty right on top of the colonies? So this year, I did that, right? I'm like, okay, well, now let me go ahead and throw some, which did help them grow a little bit during that time. Now, do I get false starts? Yeah, because it'll get up to 75 and then it'll drop to 33, right? So, and that's something we learned this year. And Brad pointed it out on a video I was doing. I think we were just like FaceTiming it when I was doing the inspection. You're like, well, I see cat brood, but I don't see any newer stuff, right? So then we started looking at it, and we went back to the calendar.
We had eggs, right? So we had cat brood and we had eggs. So we're missing a week, right? There was a week of development not there, right? So I asked Bob. I said, "So what's the weather been like there for, say, take 2 days ago, and then go back another 7 days? Was it super cold?" And he looked at the weather and he said, "Yeah, it was."
So, so then, you can, for me, it just helped me visualize and understand more about how that weather with our fluctuating temperature makes her get busy laying up when it's warm. But then guess what? When it's too cold, they'll sabotage those, right? They'll take them out. Nope, we can't do that yet. And then all of a sudden, gets warm again. She lays it back up. Oh, nope, we can't do that yet. And if it makes it to the point to where they're capped, they're good. But before that, it's all up the.
What we see sometimes is because, and the only reason I knew how to do it is not because I'm so brilliant, is that we deal with that every spring. Every April is exactly that. You can pull that frame if it's warm enough. It often isn't, but if you can pull that frame and look at that pattern, you can tell the last 3 weeks of weather that we've gone through just by what that frame looks like. And even capped, sometimes we'll have a crescent of capped brood around the outside that's dead because that cluster, it was warm enough, that cluster was loose for a while. They're capping about day 8. Cluster was loose, nice laying, they got everything covered. Then it got cold and that cluster went like this. Well, guess what happens to that outside cap brood? Freezes off and it dies. So we can tell the weather over the last 3 weeks just by what that frame looks like specifically in April.
So, so that's, that is beekeeping. That's not Canadian beekeeping. But I never had that pointed out to me before. So I never knew to look for it. Right. So now when I go out there and I'm like, well, I see this, and see that. Where's this? Right. Why am I not seeing this? Oh, let's go back to the calendar. Yep. Hit 33 that night. Pulled it out. So a lot of times.
And this brings me to another thing, Bob, and if I can jump in again. I hear people talk to new beekeepers, and this new beekeeper says, well, how often should I go into bees? And sometimes people will say, well, stay out of your bees. Don't go in your bees. Don't. And I am not a believer in that. And yes, every time you go in your bees, you kind of stop that momentum a little bit or pull that back or just kind of slow that down a little bit. However, I think it's worthwhile because the more like in any endeavor, the more normal you can see, the faster you're going to identify abnormal, right? So if you keep pulling frames and if you're just looking, like you just look at those frames, you put them back in, you pull them, you look at them, you put them back in, and you start to see normal patterns in that hive. And then over time, the second year, you don't need to do it as much. The third year, you don't need to do it hardly at all. But if you see normal so much, as soon as you see an abnormal cell, you'll zero, you pull that, and in a half a second, you'll say, what's wrong with that cell, right? And you'll start questioning that. And so I am a big advocate of new beekeepers. You go through your bees every week, go out during the weekend. You just look at them. Don't do a whole lot. You just be careful and you just look at them. And that's how you're going to understand what normal looks like. And then you'll see all the other stuff and you'll start to question it. So when you see stuff is not normal, why is it not normal? Is then you have to figure that out.
I've gotten to the point now when I do an inspection, I typically go until I see eggs. If I see eggs, yep, queen's been in here in the last day. Done. Right. I'm not doing a full 10 frame inspection. It's not needed.
Don't look for the queen. There's rare situations where you need to find the queen. You're just looking at brood frames. You see eggs, you're good. I have new beekeepers all the time. Well, I can't find my queen. I have no queen. I'm queenless, Well,
no,
but then they go and buy a $50 queen. They put it in, and the old queen kills her, and it's like, what are you doing? Well, I thought there was no queen, and there was a queen. Well, why did you think there was? Well, I didn't see her. Well, stop looking for the queen. I actually, the funny little response that I have is, you don't need a queen. And I say, well, what do you mean I don't need a queen? That goes against everything I've been taught in beekeeping. I say, you don't need a queen. Well, what do you mean? I say, you need something in there that's laying eggs. Is what you need. You need something in there that's laying eggs. That's what you need. So that takes the focus away from the queen. Okay, is there something in here laying eggs? I'm going to find the eggs, right?
Right.
Because that's what you need. You don't need a queen.
The
You need eggs.
the other thing, when I'm out there doing inspections, which I have been a little bit more lax and not going in all of the time in there. I'll do a lot of front entrance inspections. If there's good traffic going in and out, things are going pretty good. If I go by a box and it's looking kind of what the hell's going on here, then I'll pop it open and take a look, right? So I don't always
I
have to
can't walk
open it
through my
regularly.
apiary without doing front entrance inspections as I walk along. Like I can't just walk through with impunity. It's always keeping an eye on those entrances. And it's kind of like this one's got crazy traffic and this one's got nothing. You think,
Yep.
if I have time, I'm going to crack that lid and see what's going on in there.
Oh, I've done it. I've been in my truck and I'm pulling through my apiary and I'll stop, look down the row. Okay, something's going on with that one, right? Throw my veil on, go pop it, take a look in it real quick. Oh, dead out or whatever. Just that quick, right? Not really a.
That I bought when I was a new beekeeper. It's called At the Hive Entrance. It's kind of an interesting read. So if anybody wants to look that up, they might be interested to read that.
I'll stand there and see if there's pollen coming in, right, or what's happening. And so it's really kind of interesting with the whole thing, right? I mean, obviously that's why we do this, because it's interesting to us. Most sane people don't just buy, oh, this is interesting, let me get 150 of them, It's not usually how it shakes out, Oh, hey. Except for Lee. Lee does that.
It's the Venn diagram, right? You've got farmers, you have crazy people, and just at that intersection, that's where you have beekeepers.
Right. So,
of course, my Venn diagram is things I enjoy doing, things I'm good at, and things that make money, and they don't intersect.
Never. Mine are just looks like a polka dot shirt.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it's funny. I mean, we all really enjoy beekeeping. Just because I enjoy something doesn't necessarily make me good at it, right? So that's
I think the common thread among people who really truly love beekeeping are people who love a challenge, because it's a lifetime challenge. You meet beekeepers who've been doing it for 60 years and they are still challenged with it. They cannot master it.
It's like a big chess game.
It is a big chess game, and somebody keeps knocking over the pieces.
But you're playing 150 boards at one time, and every game is different. Every game is different.
And the boards are on fire, and Varroa mites are trying to eat the chess pieces, so half of them aren't even there.
But it is, and they cheat. Yeah, that's what DC says. And they cheat. Exactly. But it's But look at it. We've got 61 people. Well, it was 61, 60 watching right now of the stream, and we have a common thread of beekeeping. None of us would have ever met each other had it not been for beekeeping. And
that's right.
Working bees or beekeeping is so different for everybody, right? If you think about it, if you just not even knowing every single person that's watching, all of us have different time constraints, different monetary constraints, different goals, different aspirations. Do you want to raise bees? Do you doing this for honey? Is this a hobby? Is this your livelihood? There's all kinds of things that make our decisions for us, or how we decide things, right? Some people like to build equipment. Some people don't, like me. I don't like to build equipment. I don't even like assembling equipment, to be honest with you. But I do it because I have to do it. Um, it's just it doesn't make any one of us better or less than anybody else. It's how we enjoy to do what we love to do and keep bees, right?
There's something so I can't put my finger on it, but it definitely, you know, I went out to the apiary. I took this picture yesterday, and this little fence line here, the gate's open right now, but this little fence line comes across here, and when I go across that line into that apiary, my my calm that comes over me, my blood pressure goes down. Uh, that is my happy place, and it's a piece of hayfield. Like it's just a piece of hayfield. That's weird. I'm out there standing in a hayfield, and everything changes, right? I don't know what that is, but I love it, and I can't wait for that to happen again year after year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just you, DC,
I mean,
not
it's the
just you.
same thing for me. And some of you guys that talk to me on a regular on the phone and stuff, um, what you see on YouTube isn't always. I mean, for the most part, I'm the same guy, but I don't talk about everything that like bugs me on here. I know it doesn't seem like that all the time, but I've talked to Brad on the phone, and my frustrations of not necessarily beekeeping, but life in general, right? Just come out. And when I go out there, guess what I hear? Bzzz, and that's it,
Right?
right? There's
Yeah,
nothing else than that frame
the
I'm
noise of the
looking at
world goes away.
in that
And you're right,
colony.
I'll be out there, and I'll be out there for 6 or 7 or 8 hours, and I don't even realize it. And and I'm thinking, I'm looking up and, "Well, why is the sun going down? I just got here," right?
And
And then I
and that,
realize, yeah, I am a little hungry.
Richard, I saw your order. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. There's it's and well, thanks, Norman. I appreciate that. Oh, that was on
Oh, that's nice.
Brad's
Thanks.
channel, so Brad appreciates that
Thanks,
first
Norm.
coffee fun.
I do. I certainly do. Thanks, Norm. Appreciate that. Thanks for the
Yeah,
emails too. I don't respond to all your emails, but thanks for sending those along. And this shows Bob some love here too.
the,
You know, Bob does a lot for us, and this is, you know, he's put on this stream. I'm just kind of tagging along on my channel, and you know, I just want to share the love with Bob.
it's a so like even the swarm lure and stuff, guys. I know I appreciate every order of swarm lure. Um, that's a scientific passion that I have, right? Um, I was in the science industry for several years, and um, and I felt that it was affordable for small beekeeping supply stores to carry and hopefully help them profit, not necessarily the manned lakes of the world or myself, because it's not overly profitable for me, right? I mean, as far as doing that, it's just something I like to do. Um, and so it's not it's not like I'm not Swarm Commander, guys. I don't sell thousands of bottles to every single store in existence and all of that. It's just me. I make it. I bottle it. My wife puts labels on it, right? Yeah, I'm a disabled veteran that used to work in pharmaceuticals. I mean, you get what you get, you know.
Yeah.
So it's not like this. Oh, Bob's being rich off of swarm lore. If that were the case, I would not be working my day job killing bugs, right? That would not be happening. So it's let me see. It's a good thing YouTube know how to spell that word. Entrepreneurship, guys.
Entrepreneurship.
That's it. I just get passionate about things, and I like to share the things that I'm passionate about. And doesn't make anybody right or wrong. It is a bit Walter Whitish. I don't know if you've seen my beekeeping shirt that says "Beeking Bad" on it, but yes, sir, that's me. Go Navy. spent I've got 16 years of service. I spent time in the surface fleet and then went to the Seabees as a construction electrician. And then when I got out of that, I went into the Army National Guard as a communication specialist. So signal support specialist is what they called it back then. So done a little bit of all that. And, you know, beekeeping is my my release from.
You've had so many different jobs, though, Bob. You should have been a Canadian.
I should have been Canadian. That's it, man. If you, I know I poke fun at you guys, but you guys are like the multi. Look at Ian. Ian's a cattle farmer, a grain farmer, a bee farmer, a welder. I mean, you see him out there welding, right? Oh, we'll just cut this truck frame and stretch it, and then we're going to weld it back, and everything will be good.
I'm going to just build a deck for my truck. And when he said that, I'm going to build a deck for my truck, I thought to myself, shouldn't you have somebody who knows what they're doing do that for you? Well, he did, because he knows what he's doing.
Right. And then you look at like James. James is a commercial airline pilot. He's a manager at a plant. What else did he do? He was did he say was it electrician or a fabricator or engineer, something like that, right?
Air handling HVAC thing.
HVAC. So, I mean, multi-talented. Everybody that I've met up there. Brad has been a IT specialist, bus driver, bee farmer.
Oh man!
I mean,
I've run camera in a television studio, limousine driver. I've driven school buses and tour buses, and I've driven some 18-wheeler a little bit. Farmer, I don't know, on and on and on. Teacher, I was a teacher for a while.
So I've done that too. I've been a teacher. I actually taught at I'll say college level / university level in pharmaceutical studies. I taught sterile products and compounding, institutional pharmacy, and community pharmacy at a college level. I ran a nuclear cyclotron at Michigan State.
Computer technology in a training college, what I was doing.
So got a little bit of science there, a little bit of background, a little bit of know-how. And what do? I kill bugs, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we do.
You kill bugs. You know what?
Not only professionally, but evidently I do it as a hobby as well.
Yeah. Intentionally as a job, unintentionally as a hobby. Yeah. And you know what? I'll share a little bit of something. Being a business owner, boy, the evil one whispers in your ear every day, right? All day long he'll whisper in your ear. And sometimes he tries to tell me that, yeah, you used to really be someone. You used to have $1 billion company sitting on your shoulders, in a high paying IT job. And sometimes you listen for a few seconds, and I turn around and tell him, you know what? I own my own business, and it's successful. I can't keep up to it. It's so successful. So just don't be telling me that. And it doesn't matter if I'm putting syrup in a jar. It's not syrup, it's honey, but you know what I mean? It doesn't matter that I'm putting honey in a jar and putting a label on it. That's my job. But I own my own business. I run my own business. I make all of the business decisions from production to stocking the shelf at the store. That's no small thing. That's not for everybody. So, I just tell that guy whispering in my ear that you can go back where you came from, because I'm proud of what I do.
Yeah, that I agree, Brian. Nothing better than being in control of your own day. Yeah, that's true. However, some days,
not exactly control.
Some days that customer is in control, right? For sure. But yeah, but with that being said, if you got up this morning and said, you know what, I just don't feel like making covers today, you don't have to make covers today. Now, you may do something else.
I will suffer the consequences.
Well, eventually.
Right? But I will suffer the consequences.
if you said, you know what,
But
today I'm not making covers, I'm going to the packer and taking this honey and packing it, it's still work for
yeah.
your own self, but it's just a different job that day, right?
Or
Like
if
this
I need a
morning,
mental health day and I need to go and do something else, it's nothing to do with my job. Darn it, I'm going to do it. I don't do that very often and not often enough, but I will. I can. And
well,
that's the, the freedom people talk about.
but
It's you're
the
never
difference
off the
is
clock.
exactly never off the clock. So I got up this morning, probably 8 o'clock. By 8:15, I'm sitting my butt already in this chair, right? I took my medicines, and the first thing I start doing is looking at Amazon, figuring out, should I advertise? Should I not advertise? How much will it
Doing some
affect if I,
marketing.
you
Yeah.
know, trying to figure it out, because I don't have a plan, guys. When I started the lure, it over a year ago now, that it was just a hobby, a thing to do, right? It wasn't like I wasn't trying to be the biggest or swarm lure company out there or anything like that, and I'm not. I've been successful at not being that. So,
It's accomplished.
but what I will say is, out of all of the companies on Amazon with the swarm lure, I was the overall pick for a swarm lure as of this morning that wasn't paying for advertising. Everybody
Yeah.
else was outselling me, but they were paying for advertising. I wasn't. And Amazon had me as the overall pick, which basically means less returns, no shipping delays, everything going as Amazon plans, right? And
Better
better value
reviews per
per sale.
reviews compared to sales. Yeah. So that's a lot to be said right there.
So,
That's something to really be proud of. And
and
and that those are the goals, and you do have to set goals. It's vital that you set goals because you don't know what to go toward. Here's an example. I have to set goals on being a better beekeeper because the honey, I set the goals on the honey for my first 3 years or so, and it really took off. People love the product and they're loyal to it, and they just buy it. So the honey just sells now. So I actually have to tell myself when I see a marketing opportunity and my inner self gets all excited and think, yeah, I can do that. Let's market to this store or restaurant or group of people or whatever, right? And then, but my goals, when I kind of match that up against my goals, I think, no, you don't. You not only don't have to do that, you shouldn't, because your honey is selling and you want to be loyal to those customers who are loyal to you. My goals are to be better at what I do out here.
which makes you
Out here,
produce
I
more
need
honey, which then allows you
I
to.
need to be a better beekeeper. If I can produce more honey, then I can go and take advantage of some of those exciting opportunities in the marketing realm. But I need to be firm with myself and say, you stop that. You need to get better at this before you can do that. So that's a conditional thing. Okay, I'll get better at that, because I find the marketing part really exciting, right? It's very challenging, and you're
Mhm.
dealing with people, and you're trying to it's like you're not trying to outthink people, but you're still trying to figure out how people think and how they
Right.
think regarding your product and your just how your label looks and all that kind of stuff. So I find that very
One of the
exciting.
things that
It's difficult.
really you brought it to my attention, it was I was sitting at Brad's kitchen table, and we were, I think, having coffee or something, sitting there, and you pulled out a thing of peanut butter, and nowhere on this peanut butter did it say peanut butter. Not a
It is
place
bit
on
peanut
it.
butter. No.
It just had a picture of a bear, and you, from
Yeah.
seeing peanut butter, know it's peanut butter, but it doesn't say peanut butter anywhere on it. And
And it's a picture of a bear.
bears have nothing to do
It's
with
a
peanuts.
picture of a bear. Well, bears eat nuts, I guess. But
Maybe it was
yeah,
honey peanut
that's
butter.
branding. That is branding. That branding goes back probably
No, it was in the grocery
60,
store
80
peanut
years.
butter.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying that brand goes back 60, 80 years. That bear peanut butter combo, like that's branding. That is ingrained in our culture.
And if I
That's what that
remember
is.
correctly, it was from Kraft.
Kraft peanut butter, yeah. Which you don't
And
have
we
Kraft peanut butter in the
we don't
States.
have Kraft peanut butter here that I've
Okay.
seen. Maybe some regions,
But
but
you
I
knew
have.
right away it was peanut butter.
Yeah, because it looks like peanut butter. It looks like a peanut butter container. It just doesn't say peanut butter anywhere. It's got a friggin' bear on
Yeah,
it,
no, it doesn't.
and you know it's
It's got
peanut butter.
a
So,
bear and Kraft, and that's about it.
but you want to know that when you put, like for me, when someone, if you didn't see the name, but you saw this guy, you want to know what that is, right? Oh, well, that's the lure I'm looking for. So, or that's the brand I'm looking for, right? Even if that bee was on my honey jar, that would be, oh, well, buy the one with the cowboy bee on it.
Yeah.
And that's
Cowboy honey. What honey do you want?
I'll take another cup of honey.
No, I don't think so. I hear you in there.
You hear? She's listening.
People look at my jar and they don't even know what my company name is. It's I want the one with the yellow label.
Right.
So that's my brand. The yellow label is my brand.
And that's something when I started doing my honey that when it was with labeling specifically, and we've had this conversation before, but when it came to labeling, and see, she gave me crap and now she's getting me, what to do. I need some of Manitoba's most delicious honey in there.
You can tell that you've had 1 cup too many.
1 cup is 1 cup too many.
Really fast.
But I don't do coffee.
They're going to have to run this at 0.75 speed so they can understand what Bob's saying.
But when I started doing my honey labels, are they special? I don't think they're particularly special, but what they are is different from the pre-bought labels that everybody buys from Man Lake and Dadant. And they're all, when you look at that, if you went to not a honey show, but a convention, right? Or something, and they've got tables and people are selling their stuff there. And you can tell very quickly how many people are using the exact same label, the exact same template. I understand it's a bit easier, but you can go to.
Sometimes if you're doing 50 bottles a year, then that's kind of what you're gonna do.
Don't you? I want everybody
or that's the easy thing to do. And sometimes the impression is that that's what you have to do, or that's the only way, but there are often there's options for that. So, but you're right, a unique label, sometimes a unique jar. There's so many things out there you can do. Some of them you can really kill yourself trying to do, like specialty jars. They can be expensive, they could be difficult to label.
Right.
My jar is just a straight cylinder jar. It could not be more boring. And my labels are basic. They're easy to apply. So it really works for me. So I don't think I would ever change that.
But with that being said, when you were going through that process, you knew, I'm going to say, your own limitations, right? I know I'm not an artist. I'm not a designer. I'm not that creative, artsy, fartsy kind of person, right? So even as simple as this, I got someone else to do that, right? It wasn't expensive.
Outsourced, man. And mine is outsourced. Like I did not do the graphic design on mine. I did not do that. I put out some basic ideas for my company logo, and then a buddy of mine ran with it. He actually offered me, he's a great graphic designer, and he said, hey, let's make a label, let's make a logo, let's make a label. And he did all that for me. And so I'm eternally grateful to him for that.
So you guys are probably going to laugh. I'm thrifty on some things, guys. I know you guys think that I'm just this wealthy guy that buys $4,000 uncappers and what you see on YouTube here, but I'm actually a pretty frugal guy when it comes to stuff. So even this little bee guy, this was the second iteration of this guy, right? It cost me $75 on Fiverr for a guy to come up with this, right? I looked at his portfolio, some of his work, what I wanted to have done. I paid him $75, and that's $75. I don't know what the limit is with this guy, right? With the bee. I don't know where that can go. But for $75, it's worth the gamble. If it turns into one day being the biggest swarm lure or the guy that's on my honey jar, it was more than worth $75, right? To some guy in Sri Lanka, I think he was, that did it. But you know what? That guy, that $75 to him is a wealth of money. It becomes a high priority for him to get your stuff done fast and let you get the revision back that you want to see. Then they change it and send it back to you. They give you all the formats, for $75. And that's the thing. So that's where that kind of thing comes from. Look, he's not only on that bottle, but now he's on my other bottle I'm actually changing these bottles because of that thing right there. But the honey rustler, same guy, right? Now it's a brand line.
You named this video Bob on Coffee.
This is a live stream. So did you
what do you have there?
This is Manitoba's most delicious creamed honey inside of donut shop coffee out of the Keurig with a little bit of 2% milk in it.
No.
Oh, you put French. If you put French vanilla creamer in here, it's going to be
cream. I got cream in there.
Oh, real cream.
Yeah.
So
wow.
Hold on to your diapers, babies. Here it comes.
So I took a little branding workshop a few years ago, and it was pretty interesting. I remember a couple of really good points that they made in that workshop, and they started out by asking us who are we marketing to, and the rule is that if you're marketing to everyone, you're marketing to no one, right? So you need to find your customer. You need to find them by age demographics or income demographics or activities. If you're selling hiking boots, your customer is a person who's active in the outdoors, right? Not a guy like me. You're not focusing on couch potatoes or something, right? So that's the first thing. And then as far as your branding goes, your logo is not your brand. Your brand is things like the colors that you have here, right? You think of big brands like John Deere, right? You think about John Deere. Those color combinations, that green and that yellow, those are patented color combinations. It is illegal for you to use that exact color in any way because it's part of that brand. Your brand, you've got premium swarm lure at the bottom here. That font is your brand, right? That's part of your brand. You've got a little flock of bees up here. That's part of your brand. The little guy with the guns, that's part of your brand, but that's not your brand. That's part of it. The whole collection of everything together is the brand. The peanut butter. There's a lot of products that say Kraft at the top.
Like Kraft.
That's the logo.
Cheese. You'll love it.
Yeah. That's the logo, right? But it's not in and of itself the brand. How did you know that was peanut butter? It's because of everything else that's on that container. That's the brand. So those are and it's not very well defined, but you get to create your brand and the feeling of how your product looks.
And your apiary is not your brand necessarily.
No.
It can be
your company name. And this is the example that she gave, and I fell into this example perfectly with what I did. She said, what happens more often is somebody will start a little business like Faith Apiaries, and then they come up with a nifty name for their business, and then they come up with a nifty logo for their business, and then the logo becomes the brand, which is wrong. Your logo can be part of the brand, but you need to have a brand that's not your logo. Your logo is fine, but your brand needs to draw off of that and be a brand by itself, kind of thing. And so that's the don't leverage your clever name for your apiary too much, because that doesn't mean anything to anybody. And I'll be honest with you, if it takes you more than 1.5 seconds to explain your company name to somebody, nobody gets it, right? And nobody cares to get it, because they don't want to like, why would they want to think about what your company name means? A lot of people don't get my company name. They think my wife's name is Faith. That's what they think, right? That's fine. I don't care. That's just what I call it. I call it that so that that's what I think of when I think of my company. That's what I think of, and that's done that for me. So I don't need to explain it to anybody. Some people ask, what does that mean? But like I said, if it takes you more than 1.5 seconds to explain your brand to somebody, your company name, then it's lost on the public, because they don't care what your company name means.
Let me okay, this is something that I found, okay? And it may, well, I'll just show it. Hell, it's my stream here. So let's see. I went to the casino in Cherokee not long ago, and I thought this was the most hilarious thing ever. Read this. It's beeswax formula lip shit bee balm. Blackberry honey flavor. It's dreamy.
Lip shit.
What is this company's name? No idea. Right? No idea who makes this. But, give me some of that shit for my lips. You know what I'm talking about?
The lip shit.
The lip shit, right? So the thing is that this is actively being sold, and you see on this spin rack, there's all different varieties and flavors and whatever. But somebody is marketing something called lip shit lip balm in a casino store, which if you've ever been to a casino, nothing's cheap. And is lip shit the company name? It could be. But the thing is that somebody thought that this was a great marketing idea, and evidently they're selling some because it's on this shelf here. But it's not like, I sent Brian a link that if Brian wants to come in here and drink coffee with us and talk. But you see what I'm saying, right? There's no distinction. It's a brand. Is the brand lip shit? Lip balm?
Exactly. And that's what I was saying when you ask somebody, if you go to the store and they tell you, give me some of that honey, right? You go to the store and they say, well, which honey did you want? They don't say, I want Faith Apiaries honey. They say, I want the honey with the yellow label. Right? So apparently the yellow label is my brand. And I fell into that. I didn't get to decide that necessarily, but I did decide it because that's what I started with. I actually tried to change my label at one time, and people weren't buying my honey as much because it wasn't yellow, right? So I had to go back to my yellow label. And it cost me a lot of money in graphic design to make that mistake, but I learned.
But, in looking at this topic, I mean, we had the discussion. You guys know Alex. Alex has been on here, right? And over the past couple years, we've learned a lot about Alex's. He's a single guy. He lives in an apartment. He runs, 2 20 to 30 hives. I think he's trying to get to 30, right? So,
I think he was running 30.
So, he made what, 1,200 pounds of honey this last year in his growth year. Not for me, that would have been terrific, right? For what I've got. We're trying to discuss this whole thing with branding, and your apiary name don't have to be like Lagrange bees, doesn't have to be the honey name, right? So he's always talking about the basswood tree. So we sat here in a chat, and it sounded silly.
Oh, yeah.
It sounded silly, but we had the One Tree Honey Company.
The One Tree Honey Company. I think that rolls off, and that's memorable. The One Tree Honey Company. I think that's perfect.
And we created a whole story about this magical basswood tree that you can only find on his apiary.
That so produces exclusive, right? I think it was a great story. I think it was a great marketing tool, kind of thing. So we'll have to see where he goes with that.
Yeah, I mean, so that was the thing, is that you're creating a story, and I think we I mean, we went far, like magical unicorns, and stuff like that, right? That this is but it's a conversation starter, right? Somebody asked you about it, you can talk about it, right? It's that kind of thing. It's not. Does it always have to be true? No, Keebler elves aren't true, but it's a story,
Yeah, exactly.
It's my favorite Beakonomics buddy right
What's
here.
What's up, guys? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. How you doing this morning?
Got my coffee going.
Cheers.
Thanks for mentioning that you shared the link with me on the live, because I have 3 different Facebook accounts, and it's usually not on my personal one, so I don't usually get the notifications when you send me the link. So thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, this is right up my alley, man. I was a psychology degree.
That you don't have Manitoba's most delicious honey in your coffee, so I apologize.
That's okay.
He's got Colorado's most delicious creamed honey in there.
Actually,
probably because I don't market in Colorado.
But I love what you guys are saying about. Took me a second.
It's only the best because mine's not there. No, I'm just kidding.
Yep. But I love what you're talking about as far as marketing and branding. I was a psychology major. I have an undergrad degree in psychology, and man, so much of it is how you think about it. Like, I know I've told this story before, but I've spent hours in stores looking at shelves full of honey jars, and I've thought about the shape of the jars, the size of the jars, the color that people have chosen to use, the differentiation of color that people use to indicate visually different products. I think can be really important.
It's if it's hot, right?
Yeah, well, just even color differentiation. Yes, color can have meaning, like you just mentioned, but even the simple act of using differentiation in color just separates things for your eyes to make it more recognizable. And I think this comes from my experience as an elementary teacher, having to teach kids sometimes where they aren't necessarily good readers. You have to be able to do other things with text besides put the right words there. You have to separate words with font, with size, with color, and all this different stuff to draw the eye's attention. It is really important. So, and I've talked about this too. You could put the same product in a different packaging, and you can charge differently for it because of that packaging. It doesn't make that honey taste any better or any worse, but because of the way you package it, can impact the price point that you can get from it. So for me, as I started my business, I was always looking at the top shelf. That's the shelf I want my honey on. So how am I going to package my honey so it looks like it fits on that top shelf?
So Brian, here's something that we Brad and I touched on a little bit. I want your perspective on this. It's a difficult thing, but taking your own personal belief out of that decision, right? So stepping away from what you're trying to do and taking your own emotion, your own thought process, you really have to kind of do that when you're trying to market a product, right? Because you're not, it doesn't matter what it means to me. It matters what it means to them, right?
Absolutely.
What does it mean to them? It doesn't matter if trust me, and this was point in fact right here. Every beekeeper thinks their honey is the absolute best, right? Sam comes from down the road and says, "Oh, my honey's better." Is it though? I sell tons more honey than you do, right? I also produce more honey than you do. So that makes the difference, right? But it comes down to how do you, or what is your thought process about being able to remove yourself from your branding?
Yeah, like my logo's kind of girly, right? It's very feminine. It's got filigree in it. It's very floral, kind of. Not necessarily my style, but that's my target market. Like Brad was saying,
That's
if
your
you're
customer.
marketing to everybody, you're marketing to nobody. You're not going to be able to sell to everybody, and to expect that everybody's going to want your honey at your price point is unrealistic, and it's probably bad marketing. So one of the benefits,
price is not marketing. We'll just take that right off the table.
Well, I
just saying,
not exactly
marketing the cheapest price, right? I guess that
is marketing.
But
if you're the cheapest honey, if you want to be the cheapest honey, if you are specifically the cheapest honey, you are targeting the person who wants the cheapest honey, right? I go for the other end. I want my honey to be the most expensive honey on the shelf because I want people to be curious and say, why is this honey more money than that honey? Maybe I'll try one. And then they see why it's different. Now, you got to live up to it. You can't just, you know, you can. It does kind of work, but you've got to really live up to that commitment to say, okay, I'm going to charge you more money, but you're going to like it and you're going to want to buy it at that price point because there is a difference.
Well, I guess with that, and I'm not in stores, guys. I'm kind of in between Brian and well, not even in between. So I only sell to people that come to my house, right? That's it. I don't do markets. So Brian's like the next level up for me. And then Brad is in grocery stores and restaurants. And I think, Brian, you got some of that going on too, right? So
no, I sell at a couple of farmers markets, but nothing in a store.
Okay, so with that being said, when people come up here, I already know I'm not the cheapest. I already know that I'm not giving them a discount, right? Multiple jars does not mean you're getting a discount here. It means thank you for buying more honey from me, right? Because I already know by the time honey flow comes again, or the crop comes again, that I'm not going to have last year's honey left. Or if I do, it's very little, which is kind of what I want to have happen. Self-rotating stock, right? Not a bunch sitting out there. So I don't want, better is subjective. I'm not trying to compete on price. If you want price, a mile down the street is a Food Lion grocery store. Go there. They'll have cheaper honey than mine. You know what I mean? You came here because you see that the bees are making the honey right here. I harvest it right here. It's my work and sweat equity that's being done right here. You're supporting a local business right here, right? So I try to put more value for me in that aspect of it than the cost, right? And I don't know if you guys have different opinions on that or how you look at it.
I wanted to go back to something, Brad was talking about cheap and best. I don't know if this was something you said, Brad. It sounds like something you said. I know I picked it up on a stream, and I don't know who said it. The best is never cheapest, and the cheapest is never the best.
Well, that's the triad, right? Good, better, fast, or good, cheap, fast. You can usually have two. You can never have three.
Right.
good,
Yeah.
cheap, fast, and whatever you want. You can never have all three of those. And if somebody is selling you that you can have all three, they're lying to you. Fast, I don't know if fast has too much, I guess. Yeah, so that's the basic label design. The logo is the the part that's inside the hexagon. So that's kind of, and this is my buddy who did the initial graphic design. He he is a really fantastic photographer. So I give him products and he takes some product pictures for me. So
Very
what I
nice.
was going to say about how fast might come in is supply, right? Because if a product is plentiful, then we don't value it as much as if a product has a limited supply. So you can play off of that for a limited time. Like products have all the time. They have maybe Pepsi Cola. They'll have a particular flavor of Pepsi for a limited time. So, I'm going to buy that up, right? Or I'm going to pay extra for it. So the fact that my honey is only in particular stores, that gives the impression that it's a limited supply, which it is. If you don't buy it, then somebody else is going to buy it because it all sells every 12 months. It's all sold. And usually there is carryover, but not by much sometimes. So I guess that's where fast comes in.
And Brad, that's part of what we do with our flavored honeys and our creamed honeys. We do seasonal honeys for that particular reason. This is going to be in season. However, once summer's over, it's not in season anymore. So it is kind of a limited. We'll have different honeys and different honeys just as good. But this blueberry honey, you better buy it now because it's going to be sold out if you come back and wait till next time.
And those things are driven often by logistics, not by just marketing. Blueberries, you're only going to get blueberries a certain time of year, perhaps. I know my packer, he makes certain flavors too, and he'll make 100 pounds of that flavor, and then that's it. He maybe make it again next year, but that's it for now, right? That's all the berries he has. David says that my philosophy is how can you buy honey without sampling it? That's a good point. In a store, I don't have that opportunity. I mean, I could stand there at a table and do samples all day. I've never done that. I just don't feel like I have time. But I have my two sizes. I have what most people here would recognize as a 1 pound, and I have 2 pound. So to me, the 1 pound size is not a great value because it's a lot more money than the 2 pound per pound. But that's the sample, right? That's the customer that's going to see that and say, this 1 pound of honey is $1 more than the next most expensive honey. Why is that? And they're going to pick that up, take it home and taste it and realize, okay, now I know why. So they come back, now they're going to buy the 2 pounder. So the 1 pound is a sample and the 2 pound is the customer. So that's kind of how I cover that in the store, at least in my head.
When we started looking at the market scene and trying to find our place in it, we got a little bit discouraged because there's this one particular beekeeper who's I would say small scale commercial beekeeper that basically sends college kids to every single market in the area. And he's got a really good name brand. He's really well known. Like if you ask a Colorado person, what are the best Colorado honeys out there? That's going to be one of the names that comes up on those people who are looking for honey's mind. But we quickly realized that we could compete with them very easily because of what we were offering. We're offering a very personalized service, a very personalized experience. I'm the beekeeper. I can tell you where this honey came from. I can tell you when I extracted it. I can tell you all about it. I made that lotion bar 2 nights ago, so I can tell you exactly what went into it. Whereas those people who are college kids, nothing against them, but you walk up to them and you're like, so are you the beekeeper? And they're like, no, but I really want to be one day. And it was really clear, like what I'm doing right now is I'm making candles for some lady that called me in the middle of this stream and wanted to get some candles to send out for Easter. So I literally went through the candles that I had pre-made and I was like, this is what I have. If you give me till 5, I can have your entire order ready. And she was so appreciative because she's wanting to send those out for Easter. I even pulled one out. I was like, I have one of these, but I don't really like the quality of it. I wouldn't want to sell this to you. It's not perfect. So she heard that personalized experience that I was giving her, that service that's second to none. And for us, that's part of our brand that we're pushing out there. We're mom and pop on purpose, right? Because it's just the two of us to make sure that what we're doing is up to our standards. It's under our umbrella of scope of control. And we're going to be able to tell you everything about every single product that we make. That's part of what we're offering. And that's part of why we get people coming back to us.
Well, the other thing is, I mean, I think you could say it for the most part across the board. Employees don't typically care about the company as much as the owner does. Right?
They may, but they certainly don't have that skin in the game that kind of forces them to.
Right.
To
so
do
if
that.
this competitor of Brian sends this college kid out there, do they really care if they sell a jar of honey? If they were side by side to Brian, I bet you Brian would be a little bit more apt to.
Yeah. They're getting paid to be at that table.
Yeah, whether anything gets sold or not, right?
That's right. And do they care about that creamed honey going in the cooler so it doesn't reliquefy?
Well,
in July?
and again, you know, some employees are really good and they do care, but they don't have that skin in the game that forces them to care. Like if I'm bagged at the end of the day and I just don't care to do this or that, but I know it's going to have a negative effect, usually I'm going to do it anyway, right? Because I got that skin in the game. That's part of, what makes this go. And DC made a comment here I want to expand on. Story is everything, and that's what you got, Brian.
Yep.
Well, I got
intentionally, Brad. Intentionally.
That's people love story. They want to, and that's why people come here to my farm. They want to buy the honey from the beekeeper. That's the story. I got a guy, somebody says, hey, this honey is good. Yeah, I buy it right from the beekeeper. I go to his yard. He shows me the bees when I go there, right?
Yep.
That's story. People love story. And I love offering that too, because I'm excited about it too. And if you're not excited about the story yourself, it'll show and it's just fake. So you got to be excited about your story.
People will show up here in the rain, right? And guess what? I still walk out there while it's raining. You know what I mean? It's raining. How much honey would you like, sir or ma'am? Oh, I want 2 pints. Okay, great. I'll be right back. And I go grab them, bring them back to them, and, exchange money. Oh, hold on now. I got to go get your change, right? So I go back inside, get the change, come back out, and the whole side, they're sitting in their nice dry car, right? And when they're doing that, they're probably saying, you know what? This guy, he doesn't care. He comes out in the rain. He does whatever, right?
Yeah.
I obviously knowing what colonies are mad and hot make a difference. But if they have a, teenager or something that, oh, that's really cool. And I go over to a nuke and I pull out a frame of eggs, brood, larvae, some baby bees, right? And showing them that's the coolest thing they've ever seen in their life, and that's that memorable experience, right?
I love doing that. People, nice day, somebody got come to buy honey, and right here behind me in the apiary, they can drive their car right in here. I have people sometimes, they'll have maybe somebody's elderly or they might have mobility issues. They drive right into the apiary within 10 feet of a colony. And I say, you can just stay in the car and if you want to keep your window up, that's fine. So you'll be okay with your window down, but if you want to keep it up, that's fine. And I'll go and get a frame of bees or honey or something, bring it right over to them. And if they want to put their window down and look at it, fine. If they don't, then I'll just show them. And people just love that interaction and that ability to come and see that. And it does a lot for me too, because like I said before, this out here is often just work. Right? So that brings some of the magic back to me, right? When I get to share that, and I get to see that enthusiasm, I get to see that wonder on somebody's face, it realigns me and says to me, yeah, this is really cool. This is really cool. And somebody, a customer, a visitor has to remind me sometimes of how really cool this really is, because it's often just work. And so I need that adjustment.
Yeah, those interactions help keep you on that path. Sometimes you stray, but that's the path you had driven for yourself, and it helps you get back
It
on.
gets
Guys,
drudgery.
my wife just got back, so I'm going to get off, but I'm going to keep listening. Great chat. Keep
Hey, Jen.
going, but I'll keep listening. Bob says
Have a
hi,
good-
Jen. Jen says hi. Take it easy, guys. Have a great
So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that when, like last week, my son was putting boxes and frames together. Someone came to get honey and, you know, bring them in to go to the warmer to get their jar of honey out of there. And they're seeing work happening in the honey house, right? Boxes being assembled. And so they're seeing that it's more than just those bees in the boxes out there that are putting in work to produce this product for them, right? I mean, everybody knows the bees make the honey, but they don't see you making the boxes, you making the frames, you extracting the honey out, you know, all of that type of stuff. So,
Bob, can I tell my Eritrean woman story?
Sure.
I love this story. And it just, while we're on this topic of, you know, the people interacting and people, you know, being part of the story. And I got a phone call one day. I want to think it's last summer, but it might have been the summer before. And she phoned me, and a young woman, maybe 20 years old or so. And it was kind of an odd conversation, and it took me a while to figure out what she was looking for. And what it was is she was of Eritrean descent, and I didn't know where Eritrea was. It's Eastern Africa, apparently. And so her grandmother was visiting Canada, and her grandmother had been a beekeeper in Eritrea. So you can imagine what her bees are probably a bit spicy out in that part of the world. And so she wanted to bring her grandmother to a bee yard to visit some bees while she's here. And I thought that was awful nice of her. She didn't call me to say, "Hi, I want to come and buy a bunch of honey," but they did anyway. But so once I figured out what she wanted, I said, "Yeah, you come on out and we'll show you some bees." So she came out. Her mother was with her, and I think her brother and her grandmother. Well, grandmother didn't speak English, and I don't speak Eritrean. So the daughter and her mother was translating between myself and the grandmother. And, you know, they drove up and they parked their van right here. They parked their van right here just outside the gate. And everybody piles out of the van and goes wandering off into the apiary. Grandmother is sitting there with the windows up. I'm not going out there, right? Because she's used to the
mean bees.
African bees. Yeah. And so I recognized that. I said, okay, I want to try and make grandmother comfortable here. And so I had my veil in my hand, but I didn't put it on. And I went out and I got a frame of bees, and I walked over to the car, and I said, "It's okay, right?" And I can't talk to her. She doesn't understand what I'm saying, but we're beekeeper to beekeeper, right?
Right.
I know what she's thinking, and she knows what I'm trying to get across to her. And I took the frame and I waved my hands over it, right? It's okay. And I'm not wearing a veil. If I'm wearing a veil, you should be wearing a veil, right? So that was the rule. Unless I'm going to give a veil to everybody, which I do, then I'm not going to wear a veil. So I coaxed her out, and she stood, let's see, right over here with the rest of the family, right in the apiary. And so they were all standing around a group. And I said, okay, I'm going to go get some honey for you. I'm going to go get a frame. I'm going to show you. So I didn't tell them much about it. I went into the apiary. It was early on in the honey flow, so there wasn't much to choose from. But I did find a nice deep frame. It was all nicely drawn. It was full of nectar, and there was a little bit of capped cell in the corner. So I thought, okay, this is something I can talk about. I brought this over, and I held it out, and I was going to explain to the family what this is, what they're looking at. I didn't have the chance because grandmother piped up, and she started pointing and waving her hands across and pointing at different things and talking. She talked for quite a while. And then when she stopped, I looked at the granddaughter and I said, I'm going to tell you what she said. And she looked at me and said, you don't understand what she said. Yeah, I didn't understand what she said, but I know what she said.
Right.
And so I said, and I did exactly the same thing the grandmother did. I said, this is this, and this is this, and this is how it works, and this is all. And when I was done, the granddaughter looked at me and she said, that's exactly what she said. And I just love that story because
a beekeeper is a beekeeper.
Beekeeper's a beekeeper, right?
Yeah.
And this goes way back to what you're talking earlier, right? Following Canadian beekeeping practice, it's bees are bees, right? Well, my bees won't do this. Well, it's not your bees,
Right.
right? What you're saying is, I don't know how to do this, right?
Right. You're
And
not
I'm
putting
just
them in the
using-
best
I'm just-
situation to do that, right?
There's something going on or something different, but there's the excuse is never my bees won't, because your bees are the same as my bees, right?
Right.
My bees are the same as this woman in Eritrea. So that I will never forget that story. And it was so, their visit did more for me because I have story now, right?
Right.
I have story about how great it is to have customers and public, because they weren't even necessarily customers. They didn't come here to buy honey. They did,
Right.
but they didn't come here to buy honey. She wanted to come here to look at the bees.
Is a field
And so I
trip for
said, "Yeah,
grandma.
let's do that. Field trip for grandma, right?
Right.
And I'm probably 50 miles from where they were.
Well, hell, you're
So
50 miles from
That's
anybody, anywhere.
just about everywhere. Yeah, at least. I don't. Bob knows I don't live in the boonies, but you can see it from my house.
Right.
Definitely.
There's really not much to see here. Well, actually, you can see more because there's nothing in the horizon.
Nothing to see. You can see more. I mean, you look behind me. That's what there is to see. And I like it that way.
It's a beautiful place up there. Hey, guys.
Thank you. I'm glad.
We've been going for 2 hours. I've done my second cup of coffee here. I've got another sip here. So cheers, Brad. Thanks for a wonderful chat. And
thanks for
guys, we appreciate all of you. So I thought we would take the 2 hours and 8 minutes and figure it was a good time to end it. And had a really good chat. And thanks for everybody for participating. I thought it was going to be a short live, Tom. There are no such things in our world. And Brian, thank you for stopping in. Wish you could have stayed longer, but guys, y'all have a great day. And, we'll
have a great Saturday, great weekend.
I know it's going to
make sure you check out the vlog. Put the vlog up this morning. So have a look at that.
I saw the vlog this morning. And it was only like 22 minutes today.
Yeah, not very well. Milton covers. It's like, how many times can you say, Milton covers today?
Right. You should do that. Day one of vlog. We're building covers
it's
today.
Saturday. Building
We're
covers.
Still building covers.
Sunday, building covers. And you just get more haggard and ragged as
you let your beard grow every day. Every day you let it grow so it looks. By the end of the week, you have a liquor bottle that's empty sitting on the side.
You're giving it all away. I got to do that. Hey, Thomas, covers.
We got another cover.
They get a little crooked. They get a little crooked, but it's okay.
All right, guys. Y'all have a good day, and we'll see you on the next stream. Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.